Kamala Harris up against Chris Christie in another hypothetical 2024 presidential matchup. Today on Political Access, we're going to go through each state and see who would win this matchup. Now, it's obviously unlikely, but not as unlikely as some of the other ones I've done recently. So let's jump right into this. Safe states are over a 10-point margin, likely 5 to 10 points, lean under 5 points, and tilt 1 point or less. So how do I see this one going? Well, I think both these candidates are moderately unlikable. Most people know Kamala Harris does come off as fairly insincere, mostly unrelatable. She does have that laugh. She wants to try to appeal to everybody. I think that's what makes her fall flat. Chris Christie, on the other hand, he is much more direct, blunt, and sincere. He was a little bit of Trump before Trump. He does try to straddle the line on criticizing Trump while still talking about what the Democrats are doing wrong. He did get elected twice in a blue state, New Jersey. The second time was with 60% of the vote. But his popularity crashed during his second term. He had that bridge scandal. And his relatability, which was once really strong, did mostly fall flat. Now, he's been out of office for a little while now. I don't know how much of a long-lasting negative image he would have at this point. He's definitely viewed as more establishment, but he probably does have more working-class appeal. Kamala Harris, she's going to do well along those coasts, in those higher-educated, wealthier areas. Even though she's not really all that relatable, she'll probably do a little bit better in the suburbs. Now, having said all that, let's get started in Alaska, and that will be safe for Chris Christie. I don't think he would win this by under 10 points. If Trump was able to win it by over 10, I don't think Chris Christie is as hated as Donald Trump. I think Christie would fire up enough of those Trump voters. Hawaii, it's going to be an easy, very, very safe for Kamala Harris. Washington, Oregon, California, very safe for Harris. How about in Nevada? That is going to be a competitive state. A lot of these I went back and forth on. I tried to put a lot of thought into it. There's a lot of blue-collar workers there, Clark County. And when it comes down to it, I ended up thinking they're going to come out more for Chris Christie than someone like Kamala Harris. I think Chris Christie talks the talk, at least better than Kamala Harris. And that kind of bluntness, that kind of style, I think is going to be more relatable to those kinds of voters. So he would win it by a tilt margin. Idaho, Utah, safe for Christie. Arizona. This has become another tricky swing state that seems to be slipping away from the Republicans. In the end, similar reasons to Nevada, I settled on a tilt for Christie. Montana, Wyoming is safe for Christie. Colorado, depending on how hated Christie is there, he's going to lose it. I settled on a likely margin, probably high single digits for Harris. Down in New Mexico, this I settled on a lean for Harris, probably about 4.5 to 5 points. I just think Chris Christie, his style, is going to be a little bit more appealing than Kamala Harris. She's too polished, she's too focus group and consultant tested. North and South Dakota, safe for Christie. Nebraska at large, safe for Christie. The 2nd District, it's more suburban. Those voters generally have shifted away from the Republicans. I do have Harris winning it by a lean margin, probably 2 to 3 points. Kansas and Oklahoma, safe for Christie. Texas, that will be likely for Chris Christie. I think Texas is just too red of a state still for a Democrat to realistically flip it. I don't think Kamala Harris is really going to have all that much excitement for her. I think it would be a combination of people coming out for Christie and coming out against Harris. Up to Minnesota, this I have as a likely for Harris. This is probably just over 5 points, 5.5 to 6. Minnesota, is it ever going to flip toward the Republicans? Maybe someday. Just seems like they need to have the absolute perfect candidate to be able to win there. And on paper, I wouldn't think Harris would do that well here. But judging by all the recent elections, I'm going to have to give it to her by a likely margin. Iowa, that should be just over 10 points and safe for Christie. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, safe for Christie. Up to Wisconsin, that will be a lean for Christie. I think he would get out the voters he needs to get out. Harris would probably do all right around the suburbs. But I think the turnout would favor Christie in this matchup, and he would actually win this by 1 to 2 points. Illinois, safe for Harris. Probably low double digits, 10 to 12. Up to Michigan. This was a very tough call. I went back and forth on this, so I could see either of them winning it. It seems to still have a blue tilt to it, but Republicans are capable of winning it. I did eventually settle on a tilt for Christie. I think he would just speak more to those working-class, blue-collar workers, and there's a lot of them in Michigan. Harris would offset that a little bit. In the suburbs, she wouldn't do terrible in Macomb. But again, I think if Christie comes out there, runs a decent populist economic campaign and a culturally populist campaign, he's going to win Michigan, but it would be very close, under 1 point. Indiana, safe for Christie. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, safe for Christie. How about in Florida? That I have as a likely for Chris Christie. Given the state's rightward trend, That would alone be enough to put Christie over the top, but going up against Harris, I think she would kind of flounder here. Christie would win this by about 5 to 6 points. Let's go above that to Georgia. This is another state that I went back and forth on, so eventually I had to settle on a decision. The suburbs around Atlanta, a lot of people live there. They've trended toward the left. They definitely could trend back toward the right. If it's somebody not like Donald Trump on the ballot, Chris Christie might be viewed as too much of a Trump light, so those suburban voters might want to come out and vote against him. I also think a lot of those voters are kind of just in the vote blue no matter who camp. So when you combine all those factors together, I ended up switching it to a tilt for Kamala Harris, but I think it could go either way. South Carolina, though, it will be safe for Christie. North Carolina, that'll be a lean for Christie. Let's go to Ohio. That's an easy call, likely for Chris Christie. West Virginia, that is a safe for Chris Christie. Let's go up to Maine. At large, likely for Harris. And the first district, that will be safe for Harris. In the second district, that will be safe for Christie. Christie would do very well in that second district. It's trended a lot toward the right. And Harris would have a very, very limited appeal there. Let's go to New Hampshire. Again, another very tough call for me. The area is higher educated. And I think Chris Christie is going to fall a little bit short here. And Harris would win it by under 1 point. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, safe for Harris. How about in New Jersey, Chris Christie's home state? Well, if he actually ran for president in 2012 when he was considering running, I think he probably would have done about 3 or 4 points better in a lot of these states. I think he would have made New Jersey actually very close, but he still probably would have lost. At this point, it's a tough call to gauge how much he can rebuild his brand in his own state. I think he's still going to lose it, but he's probably going to do better here than in any of these other states. So I settled on a likely for Harris. Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C. safe for Harris. How about in Pennsylvania? This is another one where I went back and forth on. And it does border New Jersey, but I figure there's probably going to be a little bit of rivalry here between these states. And I think just enough voters here in the suburbs would want to come out to vote against Chris Christie, so Harris would win this by a tilt margin. And finally, the last state is Virginia. That's an easy call, likely for Kamala Harris. And that is my map, and that will result in 277 electoral votes for Chris Christie, 261 for Kamala Harris. Chris Christie would edge it out in this election. But of course, there's plenty of unknowns, the vice presidential candidates, the national issues, and the specific kind of campaigns these candidates would run. Which issues would they really emphasize? Which ones would they back away from? And how would that affect turnout? We have to wonder how Chris Christie would deal with someone like Donald Trump. My view is he seems to be fairly direct about it. He says he voted for him, but he points out where Trump went wrong. Maybe that's a winning formula. Now, as for Kamala Harris, I do think there's a lot of similarities with Hillary Clinton. She has a lot of appeal to the kind of elites that Hillary also spoke to. When it comes to the people on the ground, they're not going to connect with her. But given all the polarization in the country, it would be a close race. And you could probably flip 3, 4, 5 of these states depending on the specifics of the race during the campaign. So this was tough to do, but this is what I settled on. Let me know in the comments. Do you mostly agree with my map? Or do you disagree and see it the other way around? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this channel on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.